Sometimes there are things that happen that prohibit us from being able to homeschool the way that we really want to. So today I wanted to talk about three of those situations and just give you some encouragement that can help you if you find yourself having to deal with one of these situations and not being able to homeschool the way that you really wanted to. Remember that if you're not yet on our mailing list, go to goodschooling.net, scroll to the bottom, put your email address in, and that way you will get homeschooling encouragement and advice and hacks and tips all year long to help you on your homeschool journey. So one of the reasons why you might not be able to homeschool the way that you really want to is because your kids are nothing like you. This has been one of my experiences. My girls are so different from me. They're a lot like me in some ways, but when it comes to how they learn best and how they want to homeschool, we are complete opposites. And I went through a season where I got super gung-ho about Charlotte Mason. It is still one of my most favorite methodologies. Charlotte Mason education is absolutely the way that I wish I had been educated. As someone who loves books, as someone who loves to read them and talk about them, that's like the crux of Charlotte Mason homeschooling. And I went through a season where I even hired a coach, someone to show me exactly how I could transition into Charlotte Mason homeschooling, even though we were starting so far into our children's education already. I had one that was already in middle school, one that was about to be in middle school, but I was like, this is what we're going to do. You guys, this was the stupidest decision. Not because there's anything wrong with Charlotte Mason, but because that is not how my kids wanted to learn. And it became very obvious very quickly that I had made a huge mistake in trying to force this methodology onto kids for whom it was a terrible fit. There are going to be some of you who absolutely fall in love with a particular methodology. And then you're going to realize maybe after a few months, maybe after trying really hard for a few years, you're going to realize that you just can't make it work because it's not the thing that is best fit for your children. And this is when we have to pull ourselves back and realize, you know what? This is me trying to live out like my fantasies for how I wish I had been homeschooled. This is what I wish I could do for myself. And you know what? You can do that. You can absolutely homeschool yourself with whatever methodology you want. Remember that just because you're an adult does not mean that your education is over, right? But when it comes to our kids, we need to remember it's their education. And if we want to reach them the best possible way and make homeschooling the best possible experience for them, then we need to tailor it to them. And that means that if they are super different from you and they are not going to learn the way that you would love to teach, with the method that you would love to use, we sometimes are going to have to step back and say, you know what? I'm going to have to set this aside so that I can give my kids the education that they really want and they really need. And so that might look like a completely different methodology. It might mean the methodology that you want to use, but you just have to implement it in a really different way. But we just have to remember what is the whole reason for why we're doing this, right? It's to give our kids that education that we want them to have. Now, for some of you, the reason why you can't homeschool the way you want is because you've already come so far and you have done things a certain way for so long that trying to pivot now, it just kind of doesn't make a lot of sense. Or your kids are kind of already in these habits. They've already developed certain routines and things that are going to be really, really hard to break. And it's not that they're bad routines. It's not that they're bad things. It's just that if you were to do homeschooling this other way, that it really wouldn't be compatible. And you kind of have to go, I painted myself into this corner. It was my choices that got us here, right? Maybe it's that you are starting homeschool so late. Maybe it's not that you've been homeschooling a certain way. Maybe you're coming into it really late and you're learning about homeschooling and all the different methodologies and you're thinking, my gosh, if we'd done this 5 years ago, we'd have all sorts of options. But my child is already this old. They're already, doing high school work and they're wanting, this and this after they graduate. And we're really kind of in a funnel now that we kind of have to follow. If you're in that situation, I want you to remember that looking back and regretting everything that came before this is not going to help you, right? You can't keep looking back and and being angry at yourself or berating yourself for why didn't we start sooner or why didn't I do things this way or that way. What's done is done, right? We have to let that go. Give yourself, a little time to grieve that if you need to. And I don't say that tongue in cheek. That, when we have things that we're really excited about and we have to let them go, we kind of need to grieve that sometimes. That's okay. But you have to not let yourself keep looking back and being mad at yourself for not making this decision sooner or not doing things differently in the past. Instead, you have to say, okay, we're coming at this now, which is better than next year, or it's better than never having come to it. How can we make the best of this situation? And if it means that you're not going to be able to do everything that you wanted to do, that you wish you could do, that you could have done if you'd started 5 years earlier, then look at what the themes are that you want to stick with. Maybe it's, leveraging their interests. Maybe it's letting them steer their education. Maybe it's incorporating as many books as you can, and figure out how you can do that within kind of wherever it is that you're having to operate from right now. Okay. Maybe it means you're just going to have to change a little bit of how you apply the things that you want to do, how you implement things. But it doesn't mean that you're not going to be able to do any homeschool at all, right? And that is the thing that you want to focus on, is the fact that, yes, at least we get to homeschool, right? At least we're going to do this, even if it's only for a couple of years, even if it's not for as long as, we wish we could have, it's better than nothing at all, right? And you have to make the best of it. You have to keep looking forward instead of letting yourself continue looking back and being frustrated and regretful and bitter over what you could have done but you didn't do, and all that kind of stuff. You have to let that go and realize this is where we are. We have to just function from this spot and move forward as best we can. Now, for some of you, you may live in a state that really has a lot of regulation, and there's all sorts of things that your creative brain is going crazy, and you're like, oh my gosh, if we lived somewhere like Texas here, right? We would have so much freedom. We could do all this stuff, but we can't do it. Or maybe it's because you have health issues. And as much as you would love to be traipsing around in the woods with your kids, you just know that there's no way you can do that. Or maybe it's because you have to work at the same time as homeschooling. And so that means that you have less time that you're going to be able to do all of these, activities and these things that you wish you could do. And that is what's frustrating you, that you can't homeschool the way you want to because of life, where you live, the work situation, your health situation, whatever it is. And in those situations, I want you to remember that any homeschooling experience that you can give your kids is better than none at all, right? Even if you have to work while you're homeschooling, you're still going to end up with more time with your kids than you would have. Even if it's just a few hours more every week, it's a few hours more every week, and those hours are going to add up, and that's a big deal. You can do a lot with that time. And maybe you can't take them out on all sorts of fun field trips because y'all are broke. You do not have the money to be spending going on day trips and going to museums all the time and doing all this stuff. And you're thinking that means your kids aren't going to have a good homeschool experience because you can't spend that money. Realize that there are so many things that you can do, so many experiences you can have, so many opportunities you can give your kids that don't require you to spend crazy amounts of money. It's not the money, it's the relationship. It's the experience that you're having together. It's that opportunity that you have to have them home with you, and that you have to build into them and disciple them and to mentor them and to give them time and attention that they would have not had otherwise. We can always look and say, gosh, if only I could do it this way. If only I had the resources they have. If only I had the time they had. We all do that, right? But what we have to realize is that instead of comparing ourselves to what we could do with our homeschooling if we were only like these other people, what we need to compare it to is, gosh, what would it have been like if my kids were in school all this time? Think of all the time we would have missed. Think of all the opportunities, all the talks, all of the read-alouds, all of the picnics in the backyard, whatever, all of the memories we would not have had the time to build together because they never would have been home. Even if all you can do is be home with your kids, take them on walks, go to the park, bring them with to run errands, and you're feeling like that's not nearly enough, realize that it is so much more than they would have gotten, so much more time than they would have gotten with you, so much more, so many more opportunities for you to have those kind of talks that kind of come out of nowhere after, riding around in the car for a while or listening to a certain song or hearing something on the news. You wouldn't have had those opportunities. So don't compare your homeschool to other people's homeschool or to this dream that you have of what you wish you could do when you know that you're not going to be able to achieve that, at least maybe not in this season. Instead, think about what would life be like right now if we were having to get up at 6 o'clock every morning to drop them off, to wait through that car line or to wait in the rain for the bus and have to pack those lunches all the time and to have to sit and do homework with them when they're tired and they're cranky and they're worn out and they're over it, and all of these things that your life would have to have in it that you don't have to have in it because you can homeschool. So I know there are always going to be times when we wish we could do things differently. But instead of focusing on those things, focus on all of the silver linings, of which there are so many. Think of all of the opportunities that you have that you wouldn't have had. Think of all of the ways that your child is going to benefit from having this time home with you, from having freedom to be who they are and not be stuck in an environment that says, be like everybody else, or you're going to get slapped down, either literally or figuratively, right? Or having the opportunity to have an education that is tailored to them instead of having to go through the factory with everybody else, learn all the same stuff, even if it's completely irrelevant and makes no sense for them. You're going to give your kids an amazing experience. Don't focus on what you're not able to give them if there's really no way to fix that, because you're just going to sit there and ruminate yourself down into a little spiral that's not going to take anybody anywhere and it's not going to help anything. Focus on the things that you can change. Focus on the way that you can make this experience as awesome as possible for everybody, and focus on all of the opportunities and all of the wonderful benefits of homeschooling that your kids are going to get, even if it's not the homeschool that you wish you could give them. I hope this is encouraging. I would love to encourage you more. Please come join us in exploring homeschool if you haven't yet. And if you are looking for help that can help you figure out how to homeschool as best as you can, and to do whatever it is that you're wishing you could do in your homeschool, and you need some help figuring out how to do that, come join us in our membership. We would love to work with you and help you figure out how to be the best homeschooler you can be and how to give your kids as much as possible. Hope you guys are having a great day. I will talk to you again later. Take care. Bye.